For professional advice with a personal touch, consult F.L. Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Good evening and welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by F.L. Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with F.L.'s Josh Miller. Good evening, Josh.
Hello, Dan.
And this evening we're talking about marketing, social media, and on the web with Natasha and Jonathan Launi of Maramel Solutions. They'll be with us in a few minutes.
You know it well, Dan. That is part of what you do every day, and it's been a kind of a recurring topic on the show lately. There's a lot of stuff happening online. A lot of people that want to brand online. This is just another B2B group with a great story, and they're second generation, so that should be interesting too.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's always new challenges for entrepreneurs when it comes to social media. There's always someone out there creating some kind of challenge for someone.
No doubt about it. And second generation too. You know, being a second generation business, taking over from your dad, can be challenging, can be rewarding. A lot of lessons to be learned. And in the last part of the show, we'll have Nick Moraitis here, and we'll talk about kind of the tax challenges of transferring a business over to the second generation.
We were talking about this story, actually, but we'll start with some entrepreneurial news during the Aaron Rand show, and big data and artificial intelligence and this emerging tech sector that is actually becoming quite big in Montreal. This article in the Financial Post is about the rise of big data and GIS-based business, that is to say, geographic information systems. So kind of all the same grouping of industries. This is becoming more and more popular industry in Canada.
You know, we've spoken about the Internet of Things and big data before on the program, and there's no doubt that the marketers of the world, the retailers of the world, and e-tailers of the world, this is huge information. This is information that supplies to them, that gives them the direction and almost the direct access to a customer group that's buying online. Because if you can follow the trends of your consumer, and it's so much easier to follow the trends. You know, you have a smartphone, there's location enabled, and they know exactly what websites you're going to. They know the trends. They know what you like to buy. They know what time of day you go to these things. It's amazing the data that gets captured. You know, there's a little bit of, I don't want to say privacy infringement. So some people might think it's a little bit intrusive, but the reality is if you don't want it, then turn the features off from your smartphone. But if you're not going to turn them off, then they can make for huge, positive, and far-reaching data for any person selling on the web or otherwise. And I think it's for those that can take advantage of it, for those that can hire an outside service, because it's not easy to do exactly on your own, but for those entrepreneurs that can hire that outside service and that can track their ultimate consumers, what a huge benefit it could be for them.
Also in the news today, there's an interesting partnership brewing between McCafe, McDonald's Coffee, and WestJet.
And it's there's a lot of companies that can do exclusive deals that try and look for it. You certainly, when you have two big players, it's easier to make a deal. The entrepreneurs, it's a little bit harder. But I'll tell you, the entrepreneurs do have the ability to make the deals. We've had Felix Norton on air before several times, and they're able to make a deal with Transat to have their product served on their airline as a dessert for it. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for the entrepreneur to make that deal. But you got to be shrewd, you got to be savvy, you have to have your foot in the door, and then you got to make sure the deal works for you. You got to make sure that your contracts and the legalese and the paperwork all work out well, because if it's not worked out properly, you might be left holding the bag of not something very good.
This interesting piece from Inc.com, 4 ways to make your business leaner. Especially for startups. And let's go through each point real quick. Number 1, make decisions quickly.
Absolutely. I'll say the converse is absolutely make your decisions quickly, go into it, know what you're doing but if it doesn't work, get out equally as quickly, because to have a problem linger does not help at all, especially when you're starting out in business. You have no time and energy and resources to waste.
Number 2, know what can wait.
It falls along the lines of knowing what you don't know. An entrepreneur cannot know everything, and knowing your limitations and knowing what you can and can't do and should or shouldn't do is also important. Sometimes entrepreneurs can be impulsive, but if you can distinguish between what you really should attack right away and know what's a little bit less important and what you can leave on the side, that's huge too. Know where not to waste your time and what can wait.
Number 3, constantly run tests.
Never underestimate focus groups. Never underestimate the ability for somebody else to give you constructive criticism. Along the same lines, the entrepreneur cannot know it all. Can be bright, can be genius. You can have your own little superpower if you want, but you still can't know it all. Everybody has their limits in what they know. So go find out. Go see what works. Go talk to people. Go run tests, and then you'll find out what works. We've had so many entrepreneurs on air that have run so many tests. Look at Pure Vodka. I think it was their 25th recipe that worked for them. I mean, they did 26 or 27. They went back to 25, but they did so many recipes, just like, whether it's the Felix Nortons of the world, whether it's the craft breweries that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. Run your test, see what works. The people know, the people will guide you.
Yeah, and I think Nick Duvernois from Pure Vodka, I mean, people thought he was crazy spending a couple of years of his life trying to concoct the perfect vodka, and then he went on to win all these awards, and then off you go. So
it pays off.
And number 4, think twice before hiring.
I think you want to, and it falls along the lines of the first ones as well. Think twice before hiring. Make sure you have the right candidate in front of you. It's not always about the skill set. We've heard time and time again from entrepreneurs, and we're equally to blame or to credit is hire for attitude, hire for character, make sure it's the right fit, because if you have a brilliant person, they have all the skill sets, but they are a poison because they're not the right character fit, it can absolutely damage your business. So you can take your time and hire properly, but if it's not working, recognize it right away and let them go. Don't let the poison fester.
Another interesting piece from Inc.com, ways to prepare your business for the really big one or any disaster. What are some things that you think entrepreneurs should prepare for to avoid a collapse of business for a number of reasons?
First of all, Dan, I think this is one of the areas that entrepreneurs rarely think of. I think this is one of the things that they just don't plan for. Disaster recovery. What happens if there's a fire? What happens if there's a monster disaster? What happens if there's an economic meltdown? What happens if your whole data is lost because of major power failure? What happens if a plane hits a building that you're in? There are so many things that could go wrong. Thankfully, it's remote or it's low probability, but disaster recovery plans, I find, are absolutely and utterly ignored to a great degree in the entrepreneurial population. If we actually surveyed the 150, 200 entrepreneurs that we've had on air, Dan, I would be really surprised if more than a handful of them actually had a disaster recovery plan. So what can you do? What are some of the big things that you can kind of think about? There's no question everybody thinks of the online data and the servers and all that. So of course, back it up. Have your backups. I think that's probably one of the things that entrepreneurs and businesses do the most out of all this is they do back up. What I don't think they do is test their backup. I think they they have these servers offline, or they have these tapes if you're a little bit more in the older fashion, and they back up, but they don't always test their backup. So I think that's one of it. I think there's also a question of communication. If something goes wrong, how do you communicate with your people? How do you communicate with your customers? I mean, you're in the communication world, Dan. You should know that if something goes wrong, you got to have some plan to communicate with everybody that's in your environmental and entrepreneurial sphere.
Totally. We do PR, which includes internal communications, because these days with social media, I mean, if you have a PR crisis, you can't have your people tweeting out about it or taking pictures from inside the business. So it's increasingly important to make people aware of those social media challenges, which I'm sure we're going to bring up with our next guests.
And if you can't communicate online, you have to think of other ways to find people. If your whole system is down and you can't send an email, well, then find a ways to text, find a ways to go to a separate chat room. If some building's falling down, find a corner to meet on, find an alternate way to get through to your team, to your employees. And that's just a few things. Disaster recovery plans encompass so much more. And at least if you're starting to think about it, you're already halfway there.
Real quick, what about fake clients or secret shoppers?
I think, that comes back to the testing your product, and I think it's great to test your people, test your product without them knowing about it. I think it's honest. I think they really get the firsthand feedback of what it is. I actually would love to be a mystery shopper myself. I'm a little bit critical at times, so maybe I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think it gives you some real feedback, and I'm actually all for it.
Coming up next, we'll chat with our entrepreneur profiles for this evening, Natasha and Jonathan Launi of Maramel Solutions. They are a social media and web development organization, so we'll talk about them with them in just a moment.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL's Josh Miller with you on today's Entrepreneur. And this evening, let's welcome our guests, Natasha and Jonathan Launi of Maramel Solutions. Brother and sister team, guys, welcome to today's Entrepreneur.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. So first question, the easiest, what is Maramel Solutions?
So Maramel is a digital agency, and that means that we specialize in creating marketing material for the online world. So we offer services such as web development, social media marketing, design, branding, video, and photography.
Now, how did you are second generation, because I know it's radio. Nobody can see, how youthful you represent life here. But certainly, so where did you guys jump into this, and what started this for you in the family?
So as you know, we're brother and sister. Our dad started it in 2010. He was a film production background, but he always had a knack and an ability to find new trends. So he started Maramel to create apps, to design them and develop them. And then when me and Natasha got on board, we were able to offer services and create really a turnkey solution for many businesses.
Did you guys start at the same time?
No, I started earlier than Jonathan.
Yeah, and then I joined the team about a year later.
Yeah.
So what was your background before then?
Well, so I studied communications at Concordia. So from like a more educational standpoint, I had the more, how would you say, communications background, I guess. And
kind of like in a journalism side of things, or in more of a marketing role?
No, more like production. So film, graphic design, branding, storytelling with anything digital. So it was easy for me to come in because I had already been doing a lot of production, and I'm a photographer by trade, so I already knew how to do a lot of content. So at the company, I do social media strategy and marketing in general for the online world. And so when I came in, a big advantage that I had was that I could create beautiful content for a lot of our clients. And not only me, but like the rest of our team, because Jonathan also specializes in video, Enrique does as well. Yeah.
So, and Jonathan, what was your background before you came in?
Yeah,
right out of school, or?
Not really. So my role at Maramel is client relations and business development. So I come from a human relations background at school, and that really taught me how to listen to people and to be empathetic and put myself in their shoes. So then I went to real estate management. And I was dealt with the cards where I had to deal with landlords and tenants. So the tenants always wanted more. They wanted renovations. They wanted you to spend more money. And the landlords wanted less. So I had to find middle ground and always mediate the situation, which is great for business development.
All about the negotiation.
Yeah.
And Natasha, you actually had an interesting start before you joined as well, where you were kind of worked on the campaign for a famous politician. So when we come back from the break, we'll chat about that and some of the lessons you learned from there.
Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD 800. Our guests this evening, Natasha and Jonathan Launi of Maramel Solutions.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
In conversation with Natasha and Jonathan Launi of Maramel Solutions. They are a web marketing and design company. And Natasha, you had some pretty interesting experience perfecting your social media skills with a very popular politician.
Yes, I did. I was working with Justin Trudeau for his leadership campaign. I think it was in 2013, 14. So I was part of the social media team. I think we were about 5 people in the room. So Tara Hunt was our main strategist, and then I took care of all the community management and all the community managers across the nation.
Must have been quite an intense period of time.
Yeah.
Is there, what you learned out of that, what you bring today to Maramel Solutions from
Yeah.
a social media standpoint? Would there be a kind of top 1 or 2 things that you learned from there to
100%.
come into this?
Number one lesson I learned, and my mentor, Tara Hunt, was really the one who taught it to me, was to just keep it real. Everybody online just wants to be real with each other. And so that's kind of what my philosophy is for my clients, to find out what their best assets are, really, not to fake anything, and just bring out the best in them.
So how much do you find that customers kind of do want to fake it versus be genuine? Do you find yourself kind of fighting, negotiating with your clients, say, hey, you know what? I don't think you should go in that direction. I really need to keep you in line, so to speak.
I know, that's a good question. We try to find clients who have the same mentality as us, which is why we're very focused on picking the right type of client, somebody who understands what their edge is and wants to focus on that. And then it's a little bit harder with the ones that don't understand and want to fake it and have that older mentality of just advertise, I'm really good at this, but yet you're not. So there's a lot of communication between my clients, and we're always strategizing.
Have you ever said no to a customer?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Or the early stages, or you kind of learned that a little bit in?
A little bit in, for sure.
At the early stages, we found out a little bit too late, and we should have found it out a little earlier. So now we see trends that we know to say no or to say yes to.
And listen, there's a whole learning experience, and you guys are fairly young, and we'll kind of tackle that a little bit. And if customers kind of look at you and go, what the heck do you know at this age?
But you know what? I think it's an advantage, for sure.
It is. And when we come back from the break, we'll kind of talk about your experience after that.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL's Josh Miller. And our guests this evening, Natasha and Jonathan Launi of Maramel Solutions. They are an agency that does social media and web marketing. And guys, you're both very young, and this is something that I faced as a young entrepreneur myself. Do you ever get clients that say, how old are you? Do you guys really have the expertise to do this? And what's your answer to that skeptical client?
Well, I find that when you're doing business, a lot of the time you're doing business with people. So at the end of the day, you can sign any kind of contract, you can sign any paper, but when they're doing business with you, they're trusting that you're going to deliver something. And one of the things that I always do is that, and what I respect is my word. That's one of the things that I only have. So I think they recognize that. And don't get me wrong, when we go to a client and it's a big client, it's very intricate, I do tend to bring my whole team. And we have a great portfolio as well, so that helps too.
Yeah, and our team is comprised of people that are all types of ages. So we're not the eldest people on the team by far. Yeah.
Now, speaking of your team, I mean, human resources plays a big role. We all talk about, a lot of entrepreneurs talk about the magic of the team around them, and you can't really do anything alone. So how many people are you at Maribel now?
So in-house, we're about 6, 7, and then we have a bunch of people that work from home. So I would say we're
about 12.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So was it tough to find these people, and when you find them, what do you look for? Is it
Well, one of the things that's extremely important, especially in a creative environment, is to let creative flow. We can't be negative, or else we're dead. I mean, we're selling ideas. So it's one of the most important things, and what we always stress to all our employees is to be always open and let creative people do their thing.
the culture? Did the culture, because your dad started it, you joined afterwards, did the culture change a lot after you guys came in, or was it, I don't know how much did it flow from one to the other?
Well, we have very similar values, so the values always stayed the same, and we treat all of our entire team like family. So I don't think the culture changed that much. Maybe the way of doing things has changed and the structure of it, but the values are still there.
No, as they should be. And I mean, culture is something, I mean, you're a small enough group so you can kind of maintain culture. Those that work from home, do you find it's hard to keep them part of your culture? Or do you kind of bring them into the fold every now and then?
No, we're always really honest with our entire team, and we take some time to talk to them about their personal life and what they're going through so that we really understand their situation. But a big value that we want our entire team to respect is health. And I think that comes also with our generation and our age. We place a lot of value on work and life balance. So I think that's something that changed also, and we make sure that our entire team is, working out, eating healthy, is happy at work, is communicating properly. So
Even at the odd crunch times.
yeah, well, at the crunch times, we all work together to really pump out the work.
Yeah.
But
One
we
of
do it in a good
one
way.
of the things that we do at the end of every day, especially to family business, is give each other a hug.
Really?
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, sometimes you disagree, and at the end of the day, we're family. So
Not just the two of you, the whole team?
the whole
Like
team,
one
we
big
give
group
a
hug?
big group hug.
Not in the hippy dippy kind of way.
Well, weed is going to become legal, as
Yeah.
you kind of know, so you just never know.
Exactly.
How
So-
do you solve a problem if you're deadlocked with family? How do you solve that, and how do you get through that?
We honestly, we embrace conflict. We think that everybody has an opinion and it's important to hear about it. But then when it gets to crunch time, we say, okay, we have to make a decision. Who wants to do it and who doesn't want to do it? And then we voice the opinions. And somehow we always manage to make a decision. So
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you guys, social media, marketing, branding, what do you guys do to market yourselves? I mean, what has worked for you, or has there been a disaster or something that
No.
just doesn't really, click at the end of the day?
no disasters to date. That's something I learned in politics, how to, not have any disasters happen. But I think we have a really nice reputation in the community, and we have really good friends and really nice clients that like to spread the word about what we do.
One of the things that I always do is relationships. Agencies nowadays, you hear them popping up every day, and then you also hear of them closing down. So one of the big things is relationships, and that's what I do. That's what I do
Managing
for
them.
marketing. Yeah.
Now, you got into this business, you started offering different services. Your dad was more on the video side, and you've added to it. You come into the business fresh, lots of ideas, but you still gotta price things. You still gotta go in. I mean, you're kind of delivering this service that you haven't delivered before. How do you go about pricing? And do you look at your competition? How much do you keep tabs on them?
Yeah.
At first, it was we were losing money. We didn't price them properly, but we recognized that was on our end. So a lot of the times we would bite the bullet, and even still, for the sake of the business to go forward, and to keep growing, we often take the responsibility and we learn from it.
If we didn't price something properly.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we really focus on maintaining a good relationship with our clients, and our prices are very competitive, which is good for our clients.
Yeah.
So do you monitor your competition?
To a certain extent, I think we have really nice results. So I try not to focus on competition too much, kind of what I learned from politics too. I have a good feeling and I keep going and I just listen to my instincts, and I talk a lot to the people that I can trust and ask for their feedback.
So stay true to your strategy and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
But keep the open mind, I guess.
For sure.
So with your team around you, do you kind of have formal meetings? Do you brainstorm often?
Yeah.
Is it very informal, before the hug at the end of the day?
Yeah. I think, we try to have a nice balance between formalities and informalities, because creative people don't like being put in a box. So we try to keep it pretty.
Yeah. We try to do operations. I mean, that's one of a big aspect to making a business successful. Nat always gets angry at me because I always go into her office and I come up with a great idea, and she says, "I'm working here." So processes are a big challenge, but they're the key to the success. Yeah.
Now, you are a second generation business.
Yeah.
You have different roles, the two of you, your dad. How do you complement each other? Like, how has that worked when you first came in and now that you've been in there several years?
So I think we complement each other. Surprisingly, we have a bunch of different talents, so we complement each other really nicely.
Yeah. My dad, and we're very lucky, he loves encouraging young people to succeed.
Yeah.
So he always encourages both of us to do it ourselves and to try out, and if we fail, we fail, but we learn from it. So that's one of the things that we're very, very happy. Yeah.
So he's not so much of the dictatorial role. He really kind of lets you flourish.
Yeah.
And he doesn't come out and say, "I told you so."
No.
Yeah, but which is a little bit scary too when you have that kind of leader, because you have to work that much harder to figure out things on your own. He doesn't really give us the answers at all. So we work very long hours working to grow a business, and we'll do it on our own, I guess.
Now, would you say that he's more of a mentor, and you go to him for questions, and it is a collaborative nature? Or do you feel you have to prove yourself?
No, I think he's a mentor, and he's really supportive. At least for me.
Yeah. He always gets the morale up, no matter what, and that's one of the things that I'm proud of, to have him there. But no, he's very supportive.
That's great, and there's no question that at some point, there is a transition of business that comes along, and it is a corporation, an entity, and it does have to pass along at some point. So that will take its time, I'm sure, as everybody gets comfortable and as estate planning comes into it. And we'll use that, Dan, as our segue to go into, of course, the next topic, which we see it often, where you have these businesses, these second, third, fourth generations transfer to one another. But you can't ignore the tax man. The government is still looking to find its ways to get its claws in family wealth, and I think that's a challenge that many entrepreneurs face.
So Nick Moraitis, tax partner at FL, is coming up next to talk about that, and Natasha and Jonathan Launi. Stick around. We'll have your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur on the way.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Inspiring stories from outstanding business people, Dan Delmar and FL's Josh Miller with you. We're joined by Natasha and Jonathan Launi of Maramel Solutions. We'll have their one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur coming up in a few minutes. But first, we're joined by Nick Moraitis, tax partner at Fuller Landau, to talk a bit about family businesses, the transition, the estate planning. Welcome back, Nick.
Hi there. Thank you.
So, Josh, it can get complicated, but there are some tax benefits for family businesses.
There is no doubt it's a minefield, and so much so that we've had this topic on several times before, but we never get tired of hearing Nick talk about this, at least about this topic anyways.
Well,
Nick is really looking forward to the group hug after the show, and this is his inspiration to talk about this.
Pick on the old guy, yes. Okay. Business succession, Josh, is, I guess, our bread and butter. That's what we're all about. Because business succession can happen by simply selling the business. But what we tend to see quite a few times is the entrepreneurs looking to bring in family to continue the business down the road. And it's not just tax, which was always my message. Tax is just part of it. And this is where the advisors such as Josh, who know the client probably a lot better than the tax people, get involved to strategize how is this business going to continue. What is involved with your involvement in the business as well, and some of the thinking that goes on. Should they go outside and get some experience and then come in? Should they train from sweep the floors until they become the president and CEO? But at some point in time, the question that comes in, the hard question that comes in, children can be involved in the family business, just working exactly like you are, and have no shares, no equity, no anything. But I don't think that works for the children, and it may work very fine for the founders, but not for the children taking over.
It might work short term, but ultimately there has to be some ownership to really have the skin in the game.
That's right. At some point in time, you start talking about either transferring your ownership, which is usually a tax, and that's when the tax people come in. But there's also the important thing of transferring the leadership, which is when usually you're sitting and going discussing that, and then ultimately transferring the control, which also is a tax and an advisor interest. So that business succession planning doesn't happen a couple of weeks before the founder wants to retire on the beach. It has to happen years before, and it has to involve you as well in the whole process and understanding what is your role going into it, and at what point in time do these events happen. So when we look at it from a tax now I'm looking at purely tax, and we're saying, okay, how are we going to accomplish this? I guess the simplest way is your dad or mom call you up and say, okay, my company's worth X, buy me. And then you're stuck having finance and all that stuff.
What happens if they don't have the money for it?
Well, that's why there's banks, or that's why we don't tend to sometimes do that. And because the parents also don't want to put the business under the gun, having their children taking over, and you're doing it probably at a younger age than you would normally have done it, and having a bank all of a sudden coming in, and does the bank have the the confidence in you to finance your cash flow. So we then look at other means, and that's where estate freezes come in, where the founders are looking down the road. This is a strategic move. Let me set my wealth aside at whatever I'm worth today in my company. Let's organize something for the future so that I can transfer something that will not put a financial burden on the children, or sometimes not even children, Josh. It could be
sometimes on the company itself.
That's right. So we look at estate freezes, the classic one of what we call the freeze, with the introduction of a family trust. The family trust allows the owner to continue the control, because it's very important. That control is very important, and it defers the decision as to who is going to get what, because usually the children are coming in, but children may not want to continue, or maybe the children want to go in and are very happy doing a certain task, but it is not the leadership task.
So no question, there's a flexibility aspect that is huge, and when we come back from the break, we'll talk a little bit more about the flexibility, and of course, Dan, there, one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. That's from correct. Natasha and Jonathan Launi.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Natasha and Jonathan Launi's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur is on the way. But first, in conversation with FL's Nick Moraitis about family businesses and ensuring that the tax situation is as beneficial as it could be.
All right, and Nick, you've seen a lot of tax rules. You live and breathe it every day. There's got to be something out there that bugs you about this intergenerational transfer.
There is. I mentioned it before. I can sell, or sorry, your dad. I'm looking at you two. Your dad could sell his business to a complete stranger, and we can organize it that he can cash out a certain sum of money, equivalent to what we call the capital gains deduction, tax free. The buyer would organize the acquisition in a tax efficient manner, and everybody's happy and they walk away. That doesn't work in a family situation. If you want to buy out your dad, and let's say you do have the means to do it, I can't use the same strategies that we would use for an arm's length party. I know there's been concern that because within a related group or a non-arm's length group that you might get some abuse, but at the same time it gets punitive, particularly since all we ever read in the business journals is that there's a huge amount of boomers retiring, and this is businesses that are going down to the children, and we cannot do that in a tax efficient way.
So it's a minefield that you really got to watch out for.
And it's a pet peeve.
And as we approach the last moment of the show, thank you very much, Nick. As we approach the last moment of the show, we'll turn to Jonathan and Natasha and ask you, what would be your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur?
So my piece of advice is people do business with people. At the end of the day, when someone's going to hire you or is going to choose your company, they're going to believe that you're going to be able to deliver that project on time and on budget and what you promised. So stay true to yourself, believe in your product, and
your word is your bond.
Exactly.
Great. Natasha?
I would say my piece of advice would be to make sure that the service that you're selling is really bringing results to your clients, because that's never going to get old for them. And surround yourself with a really good team that you can trust and that trust you. And the same thing goes for clients that trust you and that you trust them.
And Dan, they're always great words of wisdom. I'll say the little takeaway, and it's always subtle in some of the discussion, is that these two, this brother and sister team, seem fearless, and a lot of entrepreneurs try and put their fears aside, or they might bury them. They might be, scared to death sometimes. A little hug at the end of the day will help. But a little bit of fearlessness. Go out what you're after and what you really truly believe in, and you absolutely can be a success.
Natasha and Jonathan Launi of Maramel Solutions, thanks very much, guys, for stopping by, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to Nick Moraitis, of
Good
course,
night.
with Wisdom on Taxes. Next week, Josh, you'll be off in Hong Kong.
Yeah, but Mike Newton will be sitting in my stead, and it's going to be a great show. Maybe I'll even call in from Hong Kong.
Great, yes. Docu Plus will be our profile next week on Today's Entrepreneur. Have a good night.